Dr Marilyn Wooley is a psychologist and traumatologist with over 40 years of experience, specialising in working with first responders and treating post-traumatic stress injuries. We never always know what is going to trigger us. Sometimes a backlog of things we haven't spoken about builds up and we break. Or sometimes it's not the backlog and it's actually one thing on a random Tuesday morning. We're all triggered by different things, and more than not, they catch us off guard. Why did I react to this? Am I crazy for reacting the way I did? You're not crazy, and you reacted for a reason. Dr. Wooley can help you understand all of this in How Heroes Heal, which shares true stories of psychologically injured first responders and their transformation from wounded warriors to victorious heroes. You don't need to be who you were before the trauma. That person doesn't exist anymore. There's a new you coming in. So allow it to come in. When something so traumatic occurs, we can move into this new person and let go of the past. A whole new world can arrive with different experiences, people, and ways of thinking, looking, and responding. So on today's episode, I'm with Dr. Wooley. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good. So where in the world are you?
I'm in Redding, California, which is Northern California, very northern, above Sacramento. So we're
Very nice.
we're in a rural, semi-rural area. It's kind of the wilds of California. Yep.
Yeah, it sounds lovely. It sounds beautiful. California's beautiful. So
Yes.
yeah. So obviously today we are going to talk about your book, and obviously why you've written the book and how it can help. I think a lot of people in general, actually. So, the floor is over to you.
Well, the inspiration came because I volunteer at a place that treats first responders. So I work with first responders, cops, firefighters, dispatchers, and I have to mention them. They are the literal first responders. They're the ones that get the call. And medics and, other people that are in the field. It could be other medical people and other people who respond to disaster or people that are. So I work with them, and I was probably about 15 years ago, it dawned on me that what is happening with them in their treatment in terms of getting over post-traumatic stress disorder is going on a journey. So, it just kind of all fell into place after that. And I was partially inspired by my grandfather, by his experiences in World War II. He was one of the liberators of Dachau prison camp and developed PTSD from that. So, and then I also worked at the Long Beach, California Veterans Administration Hospital with Vietnam vets in the 70s. And so it all just came together, and I started thinking about how to help these people get better. And, what better than a journey? Because, they have a mission. And so I kind of tried to do the thing with the journey, the idea about the journey, in something that would appeal to them, something to go on, something to do. So that's kind of how the whole thing started. It just kind of coalesced, and the whole idea about, and we're calling it post-traumatic stress injury now, even though that's not the official diagnosis, but injury because people, when they are exposed to trauma, can become injured. So it's not something that they've had all along, or it's not a character defect. They have actually an injury to the brain and what the brain responds. So we call it post-traumatic stress injury now. So, and it was very personal to me because my grandfather was so impacted. And he, I knew him as a very angry, not very social, couldn't communicate, just kind of didn't really have a life in after his experiences. And I went to the Holocaust Museum in DC, and what you do is you go in and you get in the elevator, and it takes you up to the fourth floor. and the door opens up, and there's this huge picture on the wall of the GIs looking in, like you're a concentration camp victim, looking in, and they all have the 1,000-mile stare. And that it opened, and I looked at it, and I was just, it was like a light bulb moment. It's like, this is what happened to my grandfather. And so then all my experiences and learning after that just kind of started filling in the gaps to be able to understand what was going on.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you call it post-traumatic injury. Do you find that kind of what you're doing in the book, it relates to not just first responders, but do you feel like it can relate to people that aren't?
Yes, definitely. Lots of people can develop that. Most people will have something traumatic happen in their life. Not everybody will develop an injury from it. It certainly speaks to how to overcome that. And that's the reason I wrote the book, not only for first responders to give them kind of an anchor to understand it. And in the book, I do a lot of what I do in my therapy with people who have post stress injury. I explain what's going on. You're not crazy. This is just what your brain does when you've been exposed to trauma. So I think it could apply to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you say about the you're not crazy, because when people are going through any sort of trauma, you do sit there and you do think, are these normal feelings, and should I be feeling these kind of things? And I think that's where a lot of people, like you said, might feel crazy, or I think that's when people realize, am I going to get better from this? How do you perceive that?
Well, what I tell people is you've had this experience that, and usually it happens when people have very intense emotions during the trauma. They feel very helpless, very scared, very out of control. And so that seems to be one thing that feeds into it. Actually, it's part of the diagnosis.
Yeah.
What I tell them is that, the emotional part of your brain, its job is to keep you alive. It goes on fight or flight, and it reacts faster than you even know anything's happening consciously. So sometimes actions get rewired and they don't, and it's hard to talk about it. What happens when, for example, when you're in extreme trauma, the emotional part of your brain is going crazy, and the thinking part of your brain turns off, the thinking part. So people have no words to put in to explain what's happening to them. So that kind of keeps them in this state of the injury.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
no. I was gonna say, and then that's when you, and then I'm thinking about it. That's when, if you are triggered by something, why the emotions are so strong then.
Yes, and because your body remembers, and it remembers because that's what it's supposed to do. So the example I give is, say you're, a cave person, many eons ago, and you're walking down a path, and you see a cave, and you say, "Wow, this is a cool cave. The kids could play here, and we could plant a garden here, and my spouse could put cave paintings on the wall." And you walk in the cave, and a tiger jumps out and bites you, and you escape with your life. The next time you go down that path, you're going to want to remember, don't go in that cave. Right. So our bodies react to things on a physical level, on a somatic level that we don't even know. So the thing about the post-traumatic stress injury is you can be walking along and nothing's happening. You're okay. You're safe. And all of a sudden your body reacts like it's a crisis, and it feels weird. And people go, I must be going crazy. There's nothing going on, but my body is anxiety and fear, and sometimes even flashbacks, and I feel like I'm going crazy. So happens. That's what I don't think you can understand post-traumatic stress really unless you've had it. And the strange feelings that it leaves you with, and the self-doubt, and loss of confidence, and it kind of steals your soul, right? It takes
Yeah.
thing away from you, and you know you have it because it's always with you. It doesn't
Mhm.
fade.
Mhm.
It's always there, bubbling just below the surface.
Yeah. The triggers is that's it's really interesting because you're right. You can be having a very normal happy day, and something that can just suddenly trigger you, and it's incredible how the feelings can come back so quickly, and they're just completely overwhelming and consume you. And I think it's definitely, like you said, it's being able to say, okay, well, I'm not crazy. This is come back for a reason. But I think the issue is a lot of the time, especially at the beginning when you maybe are going through these, is you don't realize maybe that you're being triggered, or you don't realize why this feeling's coming up. It's only until you learn, or someone sits down with you and you realize these are actually triggers. Um, but that's a really hard thing to do. And then it's like, well, when you do get the triggers, well, how do you stop it? Like, what do you do? Because people don't want to feel this every time.
No, and so, when I am treating people, first of all, I explain what's happening, and how here
Yeah.
I try to do that. I explain what's happening to your brain at different parts. So, the explanation is that you're not crazy. It's just the way,
Yeah.
I say your brain is doing the best job it can. It's just trying to keep you to survive,
Yeah.
and even though it feels really funny. So that's the first step. And, the other thing is people, I mean, I talk about the journey. People initially they don't want to think about it. They don't want to deal with it, and then
Yeah.
so they need to accept the call that you're going to go on a journey and you're going to get better. And there's
Hmm.
things that happen. You meet people that can help you. It's very helpful for people with a post traumatic stress injury to talk to other people with a post traumatic stress injury. It's very validating for them
Hmm.
to understand that other people go through this too. And then, there's various techniques that we use, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a thing called EMDR to try
Hmm.
the brain to function better again. And
Hmm.
so you're trying to connect the emotional part with the thinking part so that when those things do happen, you have better control over your symptoms. And
Yeah.
not that it's going to go. I mean, that's the one thing I tell people is the fight or flight is a very basic part. I mean, it's very deep in the brain.
Yeah.
It's something that is very primitive, obviously, because that's what keeps us alive. And so your symptoms might not all go away forever all the time, but you get to the point where you can manage them better.
Yeah.
And that's it's not that you're triggered; it's not the trigger.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
relaxation techniques, mindfulness, yoga, all those things, eating right, not drinking. Drinking is, if you have PTSI and you drink, you're not going to get better because it disrupts your sleep.
Okay.
So basically, just doing all the things that you need to do to remain healthy in your body and
Hmm.
understanding it. And, people do other things. I have one client that has a therapy dog, and when he has nightmares, the dog wakes him up. So, and that's helpful to him. He's got his nice dog there, and he loves this dog, and, that's helpful. So, but I think probably the most important part is the social connection. Being able to be with
Hmm.
people, even if they haven't had PTSI, they can understand what the person is going through. They can validate them. You
Yeah.
can say crazy. They can calm them. I mean, we're social animals, and that's. I mean, the thing that's going to keep you healthiest is having good social connections, and that's the irony of it. Because what happens with PTSI is you tend to isolate, so it just makes it worse. You don't
Yeah.
have contact there that you really need.
Yeah. And I think it's important. a phrase that I seem to use a lot and people use a lot is to remember that you're not alone. But
Right.
that's the thing, is you don't necessarily see that at the time, and you don't feel it, and you can feel very, very alone when you're going through these. And I think that's when maybe a lot of people might also then, would you say, struggle in silence?
Yes, they do. They,
Mm,
it sounds crazy. I mean, when you describe what's happening to you, it sounds really
yeah.
strange. And, why do you want to talk to people about that? The other thing I have with first responders is sometimes they don't talk to their families because they don't want to relive it. They don't want to,
Yeah.
they go home after the day is over and they don't want to talk about that call. They don't want to think about that call. So why would they want to
Hmm.
think about it? And then it just adds up and adds up and adds up and it becomes cumulative.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's how maybe then in a way it can also relate to people that aren't first responders, because whatever they're doing in their day to day, if there is something that they want to block, or they do want to, they don't want to speak out loud about, those are the little things that sometimes might add up. And eventually it's like, the case where sometimes if you break down over something tiny, minor, minute, and you sit there and that isn't the thing that made you break down. It's actually a whole backlog of things that have built up and up and up. And then that tiny little, I don't know, you stubbed your toe on the door. That's the thing that made you break down. Do you see what it's usually that tiny little thing that makes you kind of crumble over, but it's actually a backlog of things that you haven't spoken about.
Yes, and that happens very frequently. You'll find,
Yeah.
and people will say, "Why did I react over this?" I mean, I've had
Yeah.
100 of these calls and I was fine. Why today? And we never really know what's going to trigger somebody. We do
Yeah.
know that past history does. A lot of times, I find with first responders that the emotion that they felt when they were in that call reminds them of something that happened long ago, maybe even in childhood. So then you
Okay.
can deal with that. You could use the trauma work, the EMDR, brains body. You can use all of that to access that original trauma and work through it.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people understand, okay, my body remembered this, and then this other incident happened, and now it's my body's remembering that and going back to that, reacting again like that. That's helpful.
Hmm.
The more people understand
Yeah.
what's happening, and that's what I tried to do in my book and How Heroes Heal, explain that that's those are things that happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like you said, it's really important to identify the feelings and know that what it is from the past maybe that's making you feel that way. Yeah, and definitely then just, finding the ways, whether it's a therapy dog, or whether it's meditation, finding the ways for you that help express you, or just, help you relax in a way to help you get through the trauma.
Yes, and so I would say once the understanding is there and you have a social
Mm,
component in place, then there's all kinds of things that you can do to center yourself,
yeah.
feel better. I mean, breathing. I mean, there's just many, many things to do. And it's just
Hmm.
mastering those techniques. And the other thing is that what I try to do is not just mastering those techniques. One of the parts of the journey is that well, I talk about the figurative death of the hero, where you give up a lot of your beliefs that you have about yourself. First responders, and a lot of us all feel like we can handle it. We don't need anybody. We can push on through, and it's kind of like you have to give that up. You have to
Yeah.
that you need other things there to help you. And so it's kind of like the old you dies and the new you, which is better, comes in. And then,
Yeah.
I talk about post traumatic growth too, that can come from this. And post traumatic growth, that occurs when you have been through an ordeal and you learn how to manage it and manage yourself. And you
Mhm.
can actually be better. You can actually have more connection to yourself, more connection to your family, a better connection to nature, more spirituality. It's actually a leap. And so I've seen this, and in the book that's in How Heroes Heal, I tried to show how people had done this, how they had changed, and they were even better than they were before. They were more, more competent, more confident.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept, because somebody that I spoke to on here a while ago, they framed it in a very similar, they called it post-traumatic optimism. So in a completely similar way, and it it really opened up my eyes as well to that understanding, because you're right in the sense as well when you say about how the old you dies and then this new you is reborn. And it's when you go through something so traumatic, to move into this new person and to let go of the past, you can end up, from what you've been through, your eyes can open to experiences that and ways of looking and ways of thinking, and just a whole different kind of world just arrives sometimes after you've been through what you've been through. In a growth mindset or in an optimistic mindset, you look at the world so differently. And I think that, I think that maybe it might be a case of, that could be something where people don't necessarily understand that, what I've just said and what you've just said, unless they've been through it as well. Because some people might hear that and think, that sounds crazy, that you can go through something like that and then you can obviously, hit rock bottom and you can go, to some very dark places, but then you can almost come out with this growth mindset or this optimism. It's some people, I do think they think it's crazy, because they're like, how? But I think when you do go that low and when you've been through that traumatic event, you there's somewhere inside you just wants to change.
Well, and not everybody does that, and you have to work at it.
No, 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 no.
But it's remarkable. It's remarkable to see people do this. I mean,
Yeah.
the people in How Heroes Heal, they all have had post traumatic growth in one way or the other. The other thing that I think is really important is a sense of purpose. And, first responders go into their jobs in the beginning with a sense of purpose because they're going to save people,
Yeah.
right? So, what happens when they get a post traumatic stress injury is that purpose could be completely taken away. They're just lost. They don't know what to do. They feel like they can't do their jobs. They feel like they're going to make a mistake. And so,
Hmm.
you know, their sense of purpose is kind of shattered. And getting a purpose back is just essential for this post traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And, Viktor Frankl said, basically, you can handle anything as long as you have purpose, as long as you know what your purpose.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I mean, the purpose might not be the same thing as it was before. It might not be just rescue,
Yeah.
but it can be getting involved in a peer support program and helping other people.
Hmm.
And, or it can be, a new relationship with the family, that they have a better focus on their family and the purpose
Yeah.
to take care of their family. I have one guy that I just saw that is like, you know, when I did the job, and he was involved in a lot of critical incidents, a lot of officer involved shootings, and very difficult things. And he said, I realized my family is the important thing, and that's what I need to focus on. I mean,
Yeah.
the department's not going to be there on the deathbed, your family there. So, focusing on his children is his new purpose, and
Mm.
it's really wonderful to see that transfer.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that do you ever find that when you do speak to these people that they wish they hadn't gone through what they'd gone through, or do you find sometimes they say, "You know what? I'm glad I did."
A lot of times they say, I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I'm glad that
Yeah.
I'm glad if it had to be somebody, I'm glad it was me. I'm glad that I learned from it what I did. And, I'm so honored to be able to work with this population because they're so cool. I mean, they're wonderful. They're, and they're funny too. That's the other thing. First, very funny. They have wicked senses of humor. So I'm just so grateful that,
Yeah.
and the people that shared their stories, I'm so grateful that they did that too, because
Yeah.
that was kind of hard. They had to go through some deep stuff to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate that they honored me with their stories.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what's amazing is that with your book and with everything that you're doing is you are helping give people hope and you're helping inspire people and you're changing people's lives.
Well, I hope so. That's purpose, And and I wrote it too. It's not just for the first responder. It's for their families and other people, anybody that has been through, So, I mean, it's really, you have to spend a lot of time with their families, talking to them about what's happening. A lot of times I'll see family members and I'll say, look your dad isn't just being mean. This is what he's gone through and how it's changed his.
Yeah.
We're going to get him back to where he's, you know, having a good life again. So,
Yeah. 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 I think that's important. A really important point to make is when someone is going through a trauma or or whatever it is, the event in their life, it's not just them, it is the people around them. So if you can't, you know whether it's them, whether it's the person kind of in mind, or whether it's their surrounding network of friends or family, whoever's life that you can speak to, or you can give hope, or you can even help change that person's understanding, that's just even one step and one person in helping the event that's happening.
well, it is. It is a family affair because you can't
Yeah.
have a post traumatic stress injury and not affect other people. I mean,
Yeah.
foods, the isolation, hypervigilance, you get, you're jumpy at everything, all those symptoms
Yeah.
of PTSD. And plus, what it does to your belief about yourself, the guilt, inappropriate guilt, or sometimes the guilt over things that they couldn't control. That happens a lot,
Yeah.
where they didn't talk to anybody about how they felt, and they end up feeling guilty. If I turned right instead of left, the baby would have lived. No,
Yeah.
it, it's just not going to work out. They're going to have calls that don't work out, but they feel responsible,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
done something different, which is pretty pretty difficult for a first responder because you have to be able to go out there and think, I'm going to do the right job.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
self doubt
Yeah.
kind of mess it up.
Yeah, no, I understand, and it's definitely like you said, it's learning to understand what what you've done and your actions, and the guilt is a very hard emotion. Guilt is a very hard emotion to process, and that's the thing, is people process it very differently, but it is finding ways to deal with the guilt.
Yes, and guilt can kill you. When
Yeah.
after the thing with my grandfather, after I went to the Holocaust Museum, I went to a conference, and there was a guy named Mr. Aronson who did a movie called The Fighter Pilot Story, which was just
Mhm.
very intense. And
Yeah.
I went up to him afterwards and I said, "Look, at this is what happened to my grandfather. He wrote a letter to my grandmother talking about the 50 boxcars of bodies that they didn't get in time, and you could tell that he felt so guilty. He did not get there in time to save all those people." And I said, "I
Mm.
understand because he, when he was at West Point, he was a jokester and very popular, and people just loved him. And then he turned into this very bitter, isolated, angry old man.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what happened." And Mr. Aronson said, "So you have to understand that he had great guilt." And I said, "Why would he have guilt? I mean, he liberated those people." And he said he felt guilt because he was afraid. And I've always remembered that. And that, when a first responder feels afraid, not that it's not normal, it is. I mean, they should feel afraid. who runs
Yeah.
bad guys, who runs into burning,
Yeah.
normal people feel afraid, right? But if they
Yeah.
do, that really it contributes to the post-traumatic stress injury and the guilt.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I understand. So kind of if you had any advice then for somebody that say they're listening and they're at the not the beginning, but they're at the events just happened, or they're going through the deep part of the trauma at the moment, and they don't see their purpose, they don't have any hope. What advice would you give them?
There, I mean, we have come so far since I did my postdoc at the VA hospital. I mean, we have come so far in terms of understanding and treatment. And to me, it's just, I mean, in my career, we've gone from
Hmm.
kind of saying, oh, it was shell shock, they were just messed up to begin with, to we have all these treatments now. And, get treatment. Don't put it on. Why carry it
Yeah,
around with you? Talk to somebody,
yeah,
find somebody that you can trust and talk to them. And just the more education you get about it, the better it's going to be.
yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely.
there is hope, and it takes a long time for post-traumatic growth, but it's there. You can be even better,
Yeah,
help other people.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's definitely the key message, is that there is hope, and you can help, you can grow and you can help others as well. So it's definitely important to remember.
Yes, it is. So
Yeah. So where can people find your book if they do want to purchase it?
it's on Amazon, and I know there's an Amazon
Hmm.
UK. You can get it there. I'll hold up here's what the cover looks like.
Yes.
I love the cover design that they do. It's just you know you can see the person in the on the mountaintop, and that's
Yeah.
a lot of what I've seen with the people I've worked with. They just accomplish so much, and they're such wonderful people. So
Yeah.
anyway, it can be gotten on Amazon, and
Hmm.
you know I would be happy to read it.
I love the front cover of it. I think it's definitely the way with the mountain. It's when you're going through your trauma, or when you're going through whatever it is that you're going through, it is such a climb. It is such a journey to get to the top of the mountain. It is such a journey to get there, but once you feel like you're even close, or you can see the top, it's one of the most beautiful feelings. And I just think that, yeah, I think the cover says everything.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. So, is there anything else that you do want to discuss or you want to share today?
I think just to say again, it's there's hope for this, and
Yeah.
the marvelous thing is that during my career, we've gone from feeling pretty helpless, treating it, understanding it, and
Mm,
to the point we are now, where there's a lot more resources, and
yeah.
you can get help, so do so.
Yeah. 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 I think it's definitely important. It's You can get help, and also that you're not crazy. I think that's definitely something to know.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
just your normal brain doing what it has to do to keep you alive.
Mm. Exactly, exactly. We've all felt it. We've all thought we were crazy at some point. So again, that's the thing to remember, that we're not alone. We've all felt it.
Yes, you're not alone. Just being able to
Yeah,
talk to
exactly.
somebody else has been through the same thing is immensely helpful.
Definitely, definitely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.